the thing is that John Kennedy said, "Don't ask, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country."
Right.
And I looked at that at a community level, and I've always been involved in political activities, the conventions, the elections. I mean, I watch and I pay attention to British and German and Canadian elections to find out what's going on throughout the world, and they just fascinate me. When you take a look at the polls, you take a look at the topics, you take a look at what's going on in the different candidates and their positions on things. And it's something I've always had an interest in. And then doing things locally. I've been involved with a lot of nonprofits. I've helped start some nonprofits in the city of Rochester and providing service to community. I was with the Rochester JCs for years, and your service to humanity is the best work of life. And I believe that. And so that's why I run, to be able to, if there's somebody better than me, I'll let them do the job. I'm there to work hard for the people. I had somebody say, a friend called me, and he didn't support me in the presidential election. He supported one of the other candidates. And I says, "Why did you put my opponent's candidate, sign on your lawn?" He says, "Chuck, when you do something, you leave bodies in your path." Oh. Because you're very aggressive moving forward, and when you set your mind to accomplish something, nothing stops you from accomplishing it.
Right.
And he says, you leave bodies in your path, and I really felt that I wanted somebody that was a little quieter. And
like a silent expert.
But if you're gonna accomplish anything, sometimes you have to you have to break things sometimes. And there's a lot of topics that we have that people just haven't been paying attention to. The reason why I ran for mayor this time is I had 5 councilmen call me after the last election where I lost my legislative election and say, "Hey, you're not in Concord anymore. We'd like you to consider running for mayor." And I says, "Are you kidding me?" I was thinking, I could be like the oldest mayor in the state of New Hampshire if I did this. This is a job for young kids. And the thing is that I'm only the second oldest mayor in the state of New Hampshire. The mayor of Concord is older than me.
Oh, I did not know that.
So yeah, Byron is 2 years older than I am. But the thing is I said, I still have the energy. I still have the ability to do something. I was looking forward possibly going back to Concord to using my efforts to get bills passed there and to get a Democratic majority in the House. But now I'm going to help candidates get there, but I'm going to be focusing my attention on the city of Rochester, where I served as a councilman for close to 30 years. And out of the last 50, I spent 30 of those on the city council in Rochester and 18 of them in the New Hampshire legislature.
And speaking of the last run, so I ran as well. I ran District 4. You ran District 8?
8. Yeah.
8. And we both lost.
Yes.
And I guess after mine, I was like, I'm not sure if this is what I want to do. But then you took the next step and actually ran again and then won. This was a 4-way tie. You won with 38% of the vote. Rochester, New Hampshire is the 4th largest city in New Hampshire. What's your number one priority when you go into this?
We have to address, and this is something that throughout the years that I've been going door to door talking with people, and this time I didn't do much door to door work. It was the last time I had surgery on my knee. I didn't get any replacement, but I had surgery on my knee. It really blew my knee out last election going door to door.
My knees felt that too.
So I didn't do much door to door this year. I did a little bit, but not much. But prior, when I was knocking on doors and talking to people, one of the top problems that they saw, one of the concerns that most of them have, I come from a district that is more elderly, a higher level of Catholics in the district as well. And one of their top concerns was the homeless. And that people are living in tents or under tarps or in boxes, sleeping in their cars, and they're living in people's backyards, or they're living down by the river, or they're living in the woods someplace. And even particularly now, I look at the most recent report and it says supposedly there were 56 people who were unhoused in the city or in Stratford County.
Far too many.
I can find 56 people in Rochester that are unhoused, quite honestly. And I've been calling around. I'm calling one of my friends who is active in the homeless services field and to see what she's finding for numbers, because I think that number is quite a bit higher. We actually found 2 years ago, we did a study to see how many, talking to the welfare directors in the 3 communities, how many people were functionally unhoused. And they said, well, it's over 1,200 people. probably closer to 1,500 people. Now, that's what the state says is in the entire state of New Hampshire. So I'm trying to figure out where are these numbers, because we're seeing more people. I think the state of New Hampshire is having a tremendous undercount as far as these people who are homeless. And we've got to take care of that issue. And I've got ideas. I've been working for the last 4 to 5 years on the homelessness issue alone with people throughout the county and throughout the state to try to address that issue, because I think it's one of the number one issues. Trouble is that people don't want to talk about it. People on the right say they don't deserve homes, pull themselves out of the gutter. They're just drug addicts. And I look at it that they're humans. They're not animals. I mean, you would treat a dog better than you treat some of these homeless people. So, don't give me that crap that they don't deserve at least a warm roof over their head. And this is one of the things that I've been talking, particularly when I talk with people on the Republican side or the more conservative people. I say, I've been promoting these pallet shelters. It's a company out on the West Coast. Burlington, Vermont actually has a pallet shelter village. It's been relatively successful. We're going to be hopefully taking a trip over there. I have some interest from some other council members to go there. And back when I was a kid, if you were indigent and it was a crappy day and you wanted a meal and a room for the night, you found the local police officer and you either urinated in front of him or broke a window and you had a room and a meal for the night.
True. That's true.
I'm not giving him any more than that in one of these pallet shelters. It's basically a 70 square foot structure that has no toilet in it. We'd have central toilet locations. It has a bunk and a table and a chair. It's a place they can store their personal belongings.
Right.
It's 70 square feet. It's not that much bigger than that jail cell that we gave them 50 years ago, except for I'm giving them the key to the door. If they want to improve themselves, they now have an address, which they can get a job, because when they're on the street, you can't get a job if you don't have an address.
Right.
They have an address. There's a central bath facility, showers and toilets and laundry facilities and a kitchenette and an office space for services such as drug rehab. People can come in and work with them. Nurses can come in and take care of medical issues. A barber can come in and help with getting them cleaned up. And a police officer can have a place to stay, if there's to store files and stuff. We've got we have that central core building, and then the pallets are all around it. We give the person the key to that room. If they go in and they shoot up and they kill themselves, and this is the cold part, people say, that's really cold. If we go and do a safety check on them and we find that they've overdosed and died, we just take them out, clean the place up, and put another homeless person in there, because we have more homeless than we can find rooms for.
Right.
And a lot of these homeless people, particularly some of those that were in the military with PTSD, don't want to go into a shelter where the cot next to them has somebody else that may have problems. And some people, if you were working and you lost a job for whatever, a health reason or financial reasons or drugs, you may want to be in a self-contained, where you have your own room. You don't have somebody next to you that has mental health issues as well, or could have mental health. You sometimes you can't function in those places, so you don't go there. But if you had your own place, you could say, this is mine. I can actually put a picture of my kids there that I can see every day, and it isn't going to get stolen. And I can bring my stuff into here, and it isn't going to get stolen. It's just another way of providing more opportunities for us to help these people change their lives.
I was reading before this, Kelly Ayotte had put a Facebook post and said that her two number one issues, or her two issues that she wants to address in 26, one of them's housing. Yes. And I'm wondering, from her position, I don't know that she's done anything in that regard so far. And I'm a little worried that she's not going to do anything, even if she tells us she's going to. And it's such a huge issue across U.S. Right now, I have a foot of snow on my lawn. It's very cold here. And nobody wants to be homeless, not even a little bit. Right. Most of them are unfortunate circumstances. Some of it's probably mental health. Some of it's just like, people don't understand what a slippery slope it is to live paycheck to paycheck and then miss one. And then you're living somewhere else. You've lost all your stuff. And it's amazing to me, because I've only lived in New Hampshire for about 8 years now. And for the most part, the people here are very nice. if you need a hand, they got you. Even the most, MAGA or, the other side, the full spectrum, right? Most people are willing to give you a hand up. But when I go online, it's a whole different story.
Yeah.
And of course that's a lot of bots and a lot of fake accounts doing that. But I feel like online you get that sentiment that nobody wants to do anything for homeless people here in New Hampshire because, tough break, it's not me. But then seeing and hearing it from you, from your perspective, that you're going to try to tackle some of this, getting people into warm beds, food right now is almost critical with SNAP benefits being deleted. People aren't getting the job opportunities that they had even a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So much has changed in our landscape. Do you see the forces in Rochester being accepted? Are they going to accept this? Do they want to work with this? Do they want to help the people that are less fortunate?
Well, the people I'm talking to on the council, I think that we're getting there. It's taking a lot of convincing. There are a few on the council that understand this completely, and they want to do something more, and they support me in this. I mean, this is going to be one of my number one priorities in the city, to do something about this instead of just talking about it and doing nothing. And I think in Governor Ayotte's position, what we're looking at there is that the state legislature has basically cut all funding for housing. There's nothing there. And there's very little left. They've cut money that we had put in the budget when I was on the Finance Committee for extending infrastructure to build housing, because that's what can be one of the things. Sewer and water lines in cities is a major problem as far as building more housing. And her talk was also not just housing for the homeless, but housing for young families, which is something that I agree with completely. We need to have more housing, period, to help basically restrain the excessive growth in housing we've seen. Rochester's assessment just this last year, which saw people on the very low end have their taxes triple in some cases. Housing, the value of a single wide mobile home went up on average 200%.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's insane. And there's a reason for that. People are paying cash for these things. And I was been talking with people, and I was talking to the assessor, and I was talking to some doctors at Wentworth Douglas Hospital recently. And they're saying what it is somebody in Boston, or just on the outskirts of Boston, who bought a home 20 years ago for $250,000.
Right.
Can sell it now for $2.5 million. And then so they're selling them. They're coming up to New Hampshire up here, and they're finding these manufactured homes or single wides, which are the cheapest of a manufactured home that you can find. And many of them are over 20 years old. Well, try to get a mortgage on a 20-year-old manufactured home. The banks will laugh at you. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Try to get insurance on a 20-year-old manufactured home. They will not fully insure for replacement costs on a 20-year-old manufactured home. They just won't do it. So you're looking at, they'll insure it for maybe a third of its value. And you'll have to go out and get a personal loan at triple the interest rates, or if you're lucky, triple the interest rates to buy. People are coming up here and throwing down $300,000 and with $2 million left in the bank. Why are they, they don't have to worry about it because they've had that home for 20 years. They don't have a mortgage any longer, and they're moving up here. And then what I found is that when I was talking to the doctors at Wentworth Douglas, what they're telling me is that since Mass General moved up here, they've seen a tremendous amount of Massachusetts clients that were Mass General clients that are moving up here because even though they may not have the same doctor, they've still got Mass General.
Right.
And you're seeing that they're moving throughout the whole southern part of New Hampshire and buying up homes at a significantly higher price than what their real value is. And I think what you're going to see is that value will that bubble's got to burst sooner or later.
It has to.
And that single wide manufacturer will come back down in price to a more realistic level, because right now I could never understand if you can't get a mortgage and you can't get insurance, why would you even be interested in buying our house? Or you'd want to buy it at a discount, not at an inflated rate that's 300 times the value of the property.
No, absolutely. We got so lucky when we moved here. It was right like a year before COVID.
Yeah.
And we snatched this house up for half of what it's worth right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know how people can move up here. When I was running, I was asked to speak in front of a group of people, and I was like, oh, what am I going to say this time? I don't want to run the same speech over and over again. So I talked about a different aspect of New Hampshire. Because we don't raise wages, because we have no sales tax, we have no income tax, compared to the rest of New England, Vermont and Maine are a little washy here, but a lot of our people moving in are from Connecticut, from Rhode Island, from Massachusetts, from New York.
They got money.
Right. They have money because their states actually raise the wages, actually have a tax. And so in a way, New Hampshire's kind of like a coupon, right? If you live anywhere else in New England, this place is probably 20, 30, maybe even 40% cheaper to live. You can sell your house in Connecticut and buy 2 up here.
It's cheaper for the people at the top end because we've eliminated all taxes on people at the top end. The interest and dividends tax was basically almost $200 million. We just wiped it off our budget, $200 million yearly.
Which is
we
wild.
just wiped it off our budget. So these people are coming up with $2 million, putting it in the bank, and they don't have to pay any taxes on that whatsoever. It's unearned income to them. And the people who are working hard at the lower end of the scale are the people who are suffering because our property taxes are skyrocketing and our wages aren't moving. COVID maybe pushed a lot of people up to $15 an hour, some up to $20 an hour. But the thing is some of those places which were paying those $15, $20 have started to, they don't have to pay as much now because they got people out there looking for work.
Right. A lot more competition.
And there's a lot more competition. But getting back to the homelessness issue as well, that one of the things that, I know that Kelly, the governor, has sent a letter off to Washington saying that the money for the continuum of care, or those people on the very low end of the homelessness, those people that are on drugs, those people that have issues that they can't qualify for some of this other money, a lot of it's mental health issues as well. Basically, we've just cut off any services for them whatsoever because the federal government has said no. Whereas we used to get money for some of these shelters, that money is disappearing. Trump has said we will not fund that. Those people who are on drugs or those people who have mental health issues, they're on their own. We're not going to provide any money for continuum of care, particularly the low barrier shelters. There will be no money for low barrier shelters. There's no money for drug rehabilitation services at that very low end. We've just cut them off totally. They're saying that because of this, there's probably going to be almost an additional 500 people that are going to be out in the woods. And you talk about this time of year, I'll invite you to come with me. We'll stand at the library at 8:00, and you can just about like clockwork, you see the people coming in with just all their personal belongings in their hands. And they come near the library, and then they go out in back of the library, and then they cross the street, because they used to camp out right in back of the library, and the city stopped that. So they actually made the lot that they were camping out on into a parking lot. So it's just all pavement, and it's well lit, so they can't stay there anymore. They're now going down near to the river behind the Wyandotte Falls projects, and it's being in the woods there. But you see them. I would say there are easily 8 to 10 people that show up there. At the end of Brock Street, where I live on Brock Street, where it intersects with 125, there's an Irving station there. You can, at 10 o'clock at night, you can see between 9 and 10 o'clock at night, you can see people at the Irving station getting their last cup of coffee for the day or whatever, walking across the street and down this little path and around the back into the woods, and they camp there. Now, during the spring, that's flooded.
Right.
I mean, I've seen water come right up onto the road before, so that would be 6 feet underwater. And that's where their camp is. And they've been there for a couple of years now. I mean, this is not a new location. We know they're there. We've known they're there. Those people that work in the homeless, they go and visit them there, making sure they're all right. But there's probably 8 or 10 people that are there alone. And then there are places all over the city where Home Depot had a place, and I think they've made efforts to try to clean it out. But they've had people where they probably had 8 or 10 people living there, and they had some campers and people sleeping in their parking lot. They have a regular parking lot and then a place where their employees can park, which is further away from their building, but there was always campers parked there, and that's been cleaned out suddenly. And I was talking to the city manager saying, can the city provide a place for people that have campers or they're sleeping in their cars where they can go and just park there where they aren't going to be chased out, because they're getting chased out of the park and rides and all the commercial parking lots because they've been moved from one to another as the police come and chase them out. And finally, they've begged us, is there any place you can be? And I spoke to the city manager about that, and this is a bill that I had in the last 2 sessions. Heath Howard sponsored it this last session for me, which would hold municipalities harmless if they did provide a space for people to do that. and they couldn't sue us if they got hurt. Right now, they're in the woods. A tree falls on them, they get killed. They get significantly injured. They can't sue us because they're out in the woods. But if we say we want you to camp here, and a tree fell on them because of a storm, or whatever, and they got hurt, they can sue us. This bill was brought in to basically protect the community, so that the communities, at the community's option, could provide space for people to park their car and sleep in, or park a camper and sleep in. And Len Turcotte, your state representative, killed the bill both times.
Len's the guy I tried to take his seat. That's why I ran, because this isn't like, he wasn't doing what a lot of the community would like him to do.
Right.
And so I wanted to, but unfortunately it wasn't enough.
He was chairman of the committee that it went before, and he made sure the bill was killed.
Right.
Didn't even get out of the, I think it didn't get out of committee because he killed it. Yeah.
I'll never understand those people that aren't empathetic to other people's situation, and him and many others on the other side. They just, for them, it's a whatever. It doesn't happen to me, so it's not a big deal kind of thing. And that drives me wild.
We had 5 children. My wife had 2 children from her previous marriage, and we had 3 between us. So we had a big family, and we always had someone else's child living with us at some point in time because of whatever the situation happened to be. And we struggled. We had some hard times. And, early in our years with our family, there were some days I'd open up the fridge and I'd say, "You got a hot dog, say, but there's no bread. And I got to wait till Thursday to get a paycheck before we have any more bread. So, and do we have a can of beans in the cupboard?" We had a few scares like that. But and I had some health issues earlier on that we went through that luckily my employer did continue to give me a paycheck. But the thing is that we struggled. So they just maybe have never struggled. They don't know what it's like to have to put food on the table when you're sick and your employer isn't giving you that paycheck every week, or you were, you broke a leg, and for no cause of your own. You may have been hit by you've been in a car accident, and your employer says, "Sorry, if you can't be back to work next week, I'm going to have to replace you."
Right.
And they do. New Hampshire's an at-will state. Or you're working at a restaurant and the restaurant closes because they lost their liquor license, and you're a waitress and that's how you were making your money, and all of a sudden you're out of work. Right. And you've got a kid at home that needs to eat. Most of these people that are in most of them haven't experienced that before. And that's something if you haven't been there, you have no appreciation for that. And I see a lot of people in Rochester who have gone through those situations, maybe gotten out of most of them have gotten out of it, but a few of them haven't. A few of them are still struggling. Right. And those people who are struggling, the most important thing is making sure that they have the clothes on their kids' back and they have food on the table that day. And they're not concerned about politics or voting. Those people that are out of it, some of them do vote and they understand. Those people that have never experienced that before vote and they just don't care.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of that. It's almost infuriating when I read Facebook. In the morning, I usually come into the studio. I have coffee. I kind of look through the local stuff. I start with Facebook groups, get into the news and stuff. And the amount of vitriol that's on there. This is a very small state. We have 1.4 million people, and it's not a lot of us, but the amount of hate that I see, it's mostly online, because a lot of people, when you get them out, away from their keyboard, they become a little bit normalized. They'll open up the door for you and stuff. But online, it's really rough. And how do you manage that part online? Because a lot of people right now, and this is switch the topic just slightly, but young kids in Rochester, we see the bans on social media coming in at like 16. Some countries want to do 18 and stuff. Because of some of this vitriol, I'm a parent of 5 kids too, and they're older now. But if they were younger in this environment, I wouldn't want them reading some of this stuff. Does that affect Rochester at all?
Oh yeah, I mean, we have a large contingent of Facebook warriors who are out there. You can't say anything good about the city of Rochester. My MUR interview that I had, talking about positive things about the city of Rochester, I made a comment that that you don't have to go to Portsmouth to go to a nice restaurant. We have plenty of them in Rochester. I mean, you can get food that's as good a quality as most anything you'll find in the city of Portsmouth.
That was such a reasonable take, by the way.
And they are looking at it, and they said, he's a liar. You can't believe anything this Marxist commie says. He's going to destroy the city of Rochester and prove it. And I want to do a video. I want to go into some place like Natasha's on Hampshire Street and get one of their sandwiches and say, try to find this in Portsmouth. It's wonderful. Go to the Revolution and get one of their brick oven pizzas that are just fantastic.
Yeah.
Or go to the Scenic Theater and have them mix one of their margaritas for you. They are great. And there are places that when you go into the place, the environment, it seems like you're out of Rochester. But this is Rochester. We don't want to be Portsmouth, but we can meet the quality of a lot of things. Young families have to take a look at. Portsmouth is not the way where you want to go because the housing is so damn expensive there,
right,
and everything else is so damn expensive there. Come to Rochester. We have places that you can get. I mean, you can get a Moe's sub. Try to beat those. Natasha's has got some of the greatest food and pastries around. You've got Potter's Bakery, which is, you want pies? They've got pies that are phenomenal, and they're blueberry muffins that are die for. You've got Lou's Pastry now in Rochester, which is really classic Italian pastries. And you've got places that you can eat. There's My Jam Cafe. I probably got the name wrong, but I go in there and I'll tell you, their pancakes are the size of a dinner plate.
Yeah.
And they're enormous and good value for your money. That's the thing. If you like seafood, Windjammers, you can't find a better place around. But and it's good. It's just good food, and we can compete with Portsmouth at half the price.
I can't believe anybody would be upset over that. I mean, a lot of our big cities. I mean, again, if you read online, I think they call Manchester. Manch
Vegas.
Yeah, Manch Vegas. I've heard the Afghanistan comparison. I've heard
Afghanistan. Yeah.
I go to all these cities. I literally live between Rochester, Portsmouth, Dover, and Epping, and just a little bit further, Manchester. I go to these cities all the time, and like you said, great restaurants. The shopping is there. There's plenty of places to go. There's plenty of like killer spots. Barbecue, Mississippi's. I still have to make it up there. Like,
yeah.
One thing about Rochester, though, and this is interesting because 16 goes up through basically like the middle or kind of like the edge, and then it's cut by other major ways. You don't realize how big Rochester is.
Right, 47 square miles.
It's huge. Like, I was going over to Maine across 202 and to East Rochester, and I'd never seen that place like 2 years ago. It was my first time. And I was like, wait, this is part of Rochester?
Yeah.
And it's amazing because you only get seen, if you go down Main Street and you get like Papaya Thai and the main street, you think that's it, right? With a little bit of an outskirt of the suburban area and stuff, but it's so much more. There's over 35,000 people, right? In Rochester?
Just about right now.
Somewhere
just about
35,000.
Yeah, we're very close. We keep trading places with Dover.
Yeah.
Because we're pretty much the same size.
And people are coming up because of the cost of living. So Rochester is the next like spot.
And you take a look at what you said. If you look at historically of the city and history, the history has always been a big thing of mine, and particularly the history of Rochester. I can tell you a lot of funny stories about Rochester. But back in the day, it was the train center for trains that went up to Conway, or from Boston, they came up to Rochester, and the trains would turn there and everything, and all the way into Sanford, Maine, and Portland, Maine, and then and to Conway and to other places, both north, south, east, and west. Rochester was the central location where all those trains switched, and we had train repair facilities in Rochester. I used to play in some of those places. They're now gone, and there are housing developments on top of them. But one of them still exists, and it's the Merchants Plaza, which was the Humoresque, which originally was a train terminal. And you can see some places where the old tracks were. And we've tried to do some rail trail projects with those old tracks. Unfortunately, previous councils and other communities weren't as concerned about the history of the rails and setting up trails, and some of that land got sold off. The rail line from Rochester to Dover has now got garages sitting on top of it in some locations. We still own bits and pieces of it, but some places have just garages, so you can't recreate that trail.
Right.
Going north, the same thing has happened as well. So we couldn't get a rail up to Alton Bay any longer because there's been parts of it that have been sold off, and there's now buildings on where the trail was. But we looked at having snowmobile trails going all the way up through, and I think you can still get from here to there. You just don't go on the original trail. So, but yeah, it's historically, there's a lot that Rochester was a lot of the center of a lot of activity.
Yeah.
And back in the day. And we were a small community population-wise, but a large community area-wise.
Is the crime as bad as people say?
No. And particularly violent crime is down, way down. And it's not as bad as you say. Property crime, it has been up and down. It's a little higher than some of the other communities around, but the thing is, it's not significantly.
Rochester is huge. There's a lot of people that run each election cycle. Mm-hmm. And I was blown away by how many candidates were there. But your election was really different than mine. Like, I was up against the incumbent. Like, I didn't really expect to win. I just wanted a shot. You have a lot of name recognition. Do you want to tell
Oh, sure.
Story?
Yeah. The previous election, I ran against Dave Walker, who was a friend of mine, and the previous legislative election, and we tied. And then we had a very, very high-profile special election that was attracting people and money from all over the state. And I had the majority leader of the House, a Republican. He was in my ward holding a sign for my opponent all day during the election. A lot of people got involved in that race, but we won that one because we had a better ground campaign. We went door to door. We did a lot of work in the district for that. Then I ran against Dave again for a city council seat, and we tied again. But after the recount occurred, it showed that he had won by one vote. So that was, that time. So when it came out running for the legislature this last time, I was running for my House seat again. I was the incumbent. And Dave Walker comes to me. Again, we've run against each other, but Dave is a friend. So he came to me and says, you don't have to worry about me. You've got this young kid, and he's not very well liked, even in Republican circles. You shouldn't have a problem. And I says, what are you talking about? And he says, this kid, he's a student at UNH. He's 20 years old. And I go, do children watch this show?
No.
My exact words were, oh, fuck. and he looks at me, he says, what are you talking about? And 50 years ago to that election, that very same election, there was, and it was probably the very same day of the week, there was this young kid who was 22 years old, was a student at the University of New Hampshire. He decided he was going to run for the House. And there was an incumbent in a Republican district here in Rochester who had been in office for 20 plus years. He was chairman of the county delegation. He was quite popular as far as have served and never been beaten for a number of years. This 22-year-old kid decided to run against him. And that 22-year-old kid beat this old guy, this old rep who had been there forever. And my next comment to people is, do you know who that 22-year-old kid was? It was me. So when they told me I had a 20-year-old kid running against me, I says, I said that, and I said, the thing is he's going to go door to door, and This is exactly what happened. He's very polished. He's top 10 students at UNH. He's active politically in ultra right-wing groups at the University of New Hampshire. He speaks very well. He can present himself very politely. He was going to these doors and running into a lot of elderly little old ladies who were saying, and this is the comments I was getting, but Mr. Grassie, he's such a nice young man. Give him a chance.
Let him flourish.
Let him flourish. Yeah. Why do you want to stop young folks from running for office? And I said, I don't want to stop young folks from running for office. I want to stop this young man from running for office because he is not what Rochester is. He represents things on the right that I would consider hateful.
I don't think you could have done anything different and gotten a different result. I was blown away. Like, for me, like I said, I didn't expect to win. But I had been with you a lot just in the main office and hearing updates and hearing how the campaign goes. You have family members that run. Your name is very well known. Mine's not. I'm a nobody where I live. So I didn't expect much. Yeah. But I don't think that you could have done anything because 2024 was a weird year.
Yeah.
it brought out people that would never have considered voting before on both sides, right? We here in my town had several hundred new registrations for Republicans. That had never been seen before. Trump at the top of the ticket, like him, hate him, whatever. For the last one it was done. It was done. So many people were on the train and they couldn't help themselves. They wanted to win. They came out. And even if the people didn't vote, like they're still in the same team. If you voted for Trump or you didn't vote, you voted for Trump.
Yeah, well, this is one of the things that I didn't see a lot of that, as much of that as I saw that my opponent, Sam topped the ticket. He got more votes than Trump got. My race was the race that had more activity than any other race in ballot. And it's a down ballot race,
right?
Which you don't normally see that much activity at a down ballot race. I mean, we had more people vote in that election than voted in the presidential election. Yeah. Because he had went door to door and just basically, he would go door to door and he would say, Mr. Grassie wants to raise your taxes. He wants to put in an income tax, and he wants to transition kids in third grade. And so he used those two issues against me. And I had this little old lady who I walked up to her door, and I'm looking at my sheet and I'm saying, well, she's 96, I'm going to knock on her door and she's going to be able to come to the door, because my mother, who I've been a caregiver to until just recently, she's now in the Riverside Rest Home, but I didn't expect what to get. And this lady comes to the door and, it's obviously a lady. And she says, Mr. Grassie, she says, what are you doing here? You've got my vote. And I says, well, I wanted to make sure because I knew my opponent. She says, oh, I know. She says, your opponent was here. And he said he started going to this thing about you wanting to transition. We want to have boys and girls, men and girls sports, and you want to transition kids in third grade. And I told him to get the hell off my porch. I'm going, whoa, what? She used a more descriptive term. Sure. But and for a 96-year-old lady, I says, what are you talking about? And, he said that you were doing this stuff, and I said that that my granddaughter is transitioning, and that he could get the hell off my porch because he don't understand what a family goes through in a situation like that. Yeah. And then I was running into people on the streets, just walking down the street and talking to somebody, and somebody says, you're going to poison an income tax. And I'm looking at this guy, and he's got to be 80 years old. I said, sir, you'll never pay an income. And he didn't look like he had a lot of money in the bank. Sure. And particularly the neighborhood I was in, he probably didn't have a lot of money in the bank. And I said, sir, you'd never pay an income tax. What do you mean? You want an income tax? You're going to tax me. I says, no, we won't be taxing you. He just didn't understand.
Can I just say how infuriating that one point is?
Yeah.
I did about 600 houses myself with other people and by myself. And I can't tell you how many, because it was a good number. Oh, you're a Democrat. You want to raise my taxes. You want to raise. No, I don't. I want to raise taxes on the wealthy. I want them to pay the interest and dividend tax. I want to legalize cannabis. I want to find revenue streams that make sense. I have to pay property tax too. Yeah. But this is the one issue of that. They always think that it's the warrant articles that raise the taxes and not the school taxes that are in the budget. So every time I hear, well, why don't you lower my taxes? Okay, well, how about we start with getting the state, New Hampshire, to fund education. Yeah. 71 or 73% of my town's budget is simply for the school.
Right. That's not unusual. 65% is Rochester's taxes.
People are mad because me, my family, and people like us voted for a bicycle lane, that we voted for a town center. We voted for a library. It makes up a couple $100 a year. Yeah. The taxes are going up because Republicans have been in office and control of New Hampshire for almost 1 decade. I've said this to so many people. Where do you think your property taxes are being raised? The Democrats aren't in charge. They're not in the executive council. They're not in the governor's mansion. They're not in the Senate. They're not in the House. This is Republican rule.
You could go back when you talk about the Republicans have held the majority in our government. Not always controlling the Senate or the House, but for the most part, controlling the governor's council, controlling the Senate, controlling the governor's seat. And a governor who's a Democrat with a Republican House and Senate can't really get much done.
Right.
Or a Republican governor's council can't, because of our structure of government that we have in the state. You just said, the Republicans have been in charge for a decade. No, the Republicans have been in charge for 100 years.
Well, I'm just trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. At least, if you can't see beyond a decade, you can at least start there. That's all.
They've been in charge for 100 years,
right?
And the thing is that years ago, it used to be that the school department took up. Your school department took up about 50% of your budget. And the thing is, maybe a little bit more in the towns because you don't provide as many services as municipality does. But it was always, in municipalities, the school department was always less than 50%. And because of what's gone on at the state, with their downshifting of costs and eliminating revenues back to the local communities, it's now over 50% for the town, for cities as well as towns. We've caught up with the towns. We still have to provide those services that municipalities provide, that towns don't provide. But you've also got now that we're picking up a significantly larger share of educational expenses, and we're also doing it with less money from the state. We're not getting the reimbursements from the state that we were getting before. And that is something that is causing taxes to rise, because you aren't going to close down schools. You aren't going to go to 40 kids in a classroom. You're looking at quality education. You've got demands for special education that pop up all the time. And those things are killing us at the local level. I have some of the people in the city of Rochester complaining that, Rochester School Department needs more money. And I says, the school board gives you, the city council, after it, when it sets a budget, gives the school department, and it's the same thing here in the town, the voters give the school department a pie. And right now, and most of these people are complaining are special ed people, because they are protected by law that says if their kid needs a service and you go to court, you're going to win, because you have to provide those services for the special need kids. And I completely understand that, and I appreciate that. Right now, 1/3 of that pie that we have in Rochester goes to special education. They want a bigger slice of the pie. So if I give them 40% of that pie, where does that additional 7% come from?
Right. You have to go back to
it either comes from the rest of the students, those general students who don't have any special needs, and everybody said, we should be doing more for those kids. We should have accelerated programs. We should have programs for, genius programs, everything. We can't fund those things because we're putting it all into special needs, and they want more of that special needs. They want more of that budget for special needs. I appreciate their argument, but the thing is, if we need to get a bigger pie, there's only basically two places we can get it. We get it from the taxpayers. And the taxpayers are already stressed out. Trying to get a bigger pie from them is not a very popular thing, because we're already basically charging as much as we can. We're getting as much as we can out of the taxpayers. Or we go to the state and federal government. And, if you go to the state, that's usually the federal government. And the thing is that that's where you got your pie. And the thing is that the state has been reducing the amount they get. So they were actually putting constraints on the size of your pie, period. And so municipalities don't have a lot of choice when it comes to providing more money for schools, because it isn't there. And we're seeing less of it come down from Washington with the elimination of the Department of Education. That basically is impacting special needs tremendously.
It's going to crush our communities.
And it's crushing our communities already. And then you're seeing vouchers at the state level. And you're seeing reductions in the interest and dividends tax, which were revenues that we had that would help communities. A lot of that revenue came back to the local communities. I went door to door and we were talking about interest and dividends tax, and I know that some people talk about an income tax. The attack they have is the bill they use actually is the Medical and Family Leave Act, that we voted for that, and they said it's an income tax. So, and it's not. It's a payroll tax. It's significantly different. We do it now for workman's comp, so it's similar to that. When I was going door to door, I was talking to people. I said, you have to have close to $400,000 in the bank before you start paying the interest and dividends tax. I ran into a few people who were retired government employees or teachers who put their money all into the bank. And didn't have any of their own kids because they were teaching school, and those were their children, and they got some money in the bank. But most of them said, I only pay $100 in interest and dividends tax. I walked up to one house and I'm talking to these two elderly folks, and I'm saying, you have to have $500,000 in the bank. And they said, well, we do. And I said, well, you paying the interest and dividends tax? And, they sort of hit me, because most everybody in my district, we don't have wealthy neighborhoods in my district. There are a few now. But this was somebody who lived near me, in fact. And she says, we've always voted for you. And they still voted for me, they said, yeah, we had a lot of money. We both had very good jobs, and we planned for the future. And we didn't have to worry because they were all they were both in executive positions. And they said they do pay it, but they don't mind paying it because they knew what it was going for. Now they've got this extra money and they don't need it.
I feel like most people, when they have money, they understand investment in their community,
right?
Like brings back so much more, right? Like for me, just as a resident of this town, I want my community educated. I don't want my kids to leave the state because they can't afford here. They can't find a place to live. The education isn't where they want to raise their kids. Mm-hmm. There's so many things that and the tax thing probably gets me the most because it's the one area that you hear the most drivel about. Mm-hmm. People don't understand income tax, sales tax, and stuff like that. But I don't really support an income tax and a sales tax personally because it taxes poor people. I want to tax the wealthy, the people that are here buying their second, their third house, their Airbnb houses. We have a lot of wealth in this state, and they get to enjoy the beauty of this state because people like me, people like you, we pay our property taxes. Yep. It keeps the trails open. It keeps a lot of things open. I think we could do such a better job. I don't know if we can do it at the municipal level, but certainly at the state level, there was so much more that could be done. And it is frustrating. It's frustrating to see these thoughts, Yeah,
there's not much more we can do at the local level. I mean, we're stuck. The only revenues we have are taxes. And the little that we get from the state now, and they've just been cutting back every year, and they're trying to cut back more on. They're trying to cut back more on education funding as well. We have what they call the Education Trust Fund. That's being used to fund vouchers. Yeah, that's being taken. And the last session that I was there, they wanted to basically eliminate it, put all the money in the general fund. Then you had to come beg to the general fund if you need any money for education.
Good luck.
And it wasn't there for extraordinary needs, which is what it originally was intended to set up. If you had a special needs student that showed up in November, you didn't budget for that.
Right.
It was impossible to budget for because you didn't know that person was going to be there. And then you've got a $100,000 cost for providing medical care for that student while they're in the schools. I worked in special education in Rochester for 10 years. After I retired as a town planner for 20 years, I went into special ed and worked as a paraprofessional in Rochester working with special needs students. Mm-hmm. And I saw the whole scale of special needs services. And it's a struggle. They wouldn't give us enough hours to be able to do our jobs. We had to, we got paid for only 30 hours a week so that they wouldn't have to pay you benefits. And that's basically what paraprofessionals get most every place you go. And if I remember correctly, I think when I started there in 2009, I think I was making like $9 an hour. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough job.
Yeah, especially for $9 an hour.
Yeah, I think when I finished, I was making $14 an hour. I was at the top of the pay scale for paraprofessionals.
That's wild.
So I had been there for 10 years, and I was at the top of the pay scale.
I know they're always saying, like, don't mass up New Hampshire. That drives me wild to begin with. But I just wish that this state would be on the same level competitively as all the other states in New England. Like, the other states get it. Perfect example. We just had the whole CDC thing go on, right? Where all the states in New England paired together and said, hey, we'll just do our own recommendations because the federal government's broken right now and we can't. New Hampshire didn't even join it.
No.
I don't know if that's part of like the Free State Project. I don't know if that mentality comes from like, I'm not sure where that stems from, but like New Hampshire's not special in that regard. Like I don't even want to, I will say it. Everybody always says we're the Alabama of the North.
Yeah.
That's upsetting.
It is upsetting. And you know something, when you talk about, this is what I listen to this and people say, don't mass up New Hampshire. I've been involved in statewide politics for over 50 years now.
Yeah.
And I remember when Salem and Wyndham and a lot of those other communities along the 93 corridor, which is where everybody supposedly comes up from Massachusetts, southern Rockingham County, the southern tier of Rockingham County was solidly Democratic. Solidly Democratic.
Yeah.
It's now solidly Republican.
Well, that's because the Republicans moved over the line and not the Democrats.
Right. It's the Republicans that have come up here and they say, don't mass up New Hampshire. And that's exactly what they've done.
That's exactly what you're doing.
So they've moved into New Hampshire, and they started to where the New England ethics was all, and morals particularly, was all that we help each other.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that historically you saw, that farmers worked together. When one of the farmers was struggling, other farmers came and helped. If someone had a problem with their flock, the other farmers came and helped. If they needed a barn, the other farmers came and helped. It was almost like the Amish, when they're building these buildings together and everything. And the New England did a lot of that stuff. We never let one person suffer because of something that happened that was out of their control.
Right.
And even if it was something that they screwed up and did something that was within their control, we gave them the benefit of the doubt and we helped them. Now you've got these people, and I think it's a lot of the Free State Project mentality that's been coming up here, because this goes back to Craig Benson, Governor Benson, when he invited them all to New Hampshire. What they did is they all started flocking to New Hampshire. And they got just enough people to be able to take over the legislature, and that's what they wanted to do. But if you look at those communities like Salem, I remember Salem was a solidly Democratic community back in the 70s and early 80s. Yeah. And all of a sudden it started switching because those people from Massachusetts who were Republicans moved to New Hampshire because we were a Republican state, back then, significant. I mean, I remember less than 100 Democratic reps in the House. My wife served in the legislature as well, and she spent 20 years there. And when I was out earning a living, she was in the House, and she served with 99 Democrats in the House. So don't tell me that that's the Democrats who are massing up New Hampshire. It's the Republicans who are massing up New Hampshire, and they're letting them do it.
Oh, absolutely, because the Democrats need to be the scapegoat.
Of course.
Right. Always. Of course.
We're the boogeyman. Bad guys.
If something's wrong, look at all those guys, because I know they're not in charge, but still look at them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I said this earlier. I'm from Connecticut. I grew up there. I turned 18. I know, right? I heard a word so I was on Reddit, and I didn't know this. And I knew that mass people are called massholes.
Yeah. What do they call Connecticut people? I didn't know that one. I haven't heard this one.
Connecticunts.
Oh.
I had never heard that before.
That's bad.
But, oh my God, when I read that for the first time, I said, I'll accept that. That's nice. That's nice, right? To have my own word. Because usually you say, hey, I'm from Connecticut. People are like, oh, that's nice. And they move on. Yeah. Because it's a little stamp size state like many of ours. But I just couldn't believe that connected with so many people. Don't mass up like New Hampshire. Like, what do you mean? We need mass. Most people live on the border and they work in Boston or just over and not just Mass, but also Vermont on that side and Maine over here. Yep. And it's crazy to me how much we depend on our neighboring states to bring income and wealth into this state.
And all those people are paying income taxes to those other states.
Yes.
They're paying income taxes
but
to
not
Vermont,
here.
Massachusetts, and Maine, but not here.
Yeah, not here. My father used to, I remember growing up, always came up from Rhode Island to get his alcohol from our liquor stores and cigarettes. And then he would drive all the way back. Sure, we get the sale, but where was the taxes? Where was everything? I mean, you'd argue, well, he wouldn't have come up if you had those, but if you had just the slightest, the state would benefit. And it drives me crazy how much we won't get out of our own way. And I have a feeling, much like the national level, it's because rich people have already infiltrated our government. Free staters have already infiltrated our government. They want to break it. They want us to be just all woods. Just the
Alabama or the North.
Yeah. Just leave me alone. I'm in my shack and I'm fine.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me. We could be so much more.
This is what a lot of people don't understand. The Free State Project has their own real estate agency. They have their own employment agency. They have everything you need, Free State. They have their own moving company. They'll move people to New Hampshire.
How do we stop that?
They employ their own. They employ their own people because there are a few wealthy people here in the state who will employ Free Staters if they come, and they'll even guarantee you employment if you run for the legislature. You'll get paid extra.
Sounds like Scientology.
Yeah, and it's you run for the legislature, we'll guarantee you a job, and you only have to work the amount of hours you can work because we'll still give you a paycheck if you serve in the legislature.
And the people that are working the hardest here in New Hampshire, they're picking up the slack for all those move-ins. Yep. And literally, the House Speaker is a Free Stater as well.
Yep.
very proud of it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
That's an incredible journey we have in front of us to even like get New Hampshire back for the people.
Yeah.
And the worst part is the propaganda, the misinformation, everything that's coming out just makes it seem like, oh, the Republicans aren't a problem. Yeah. Just keep voting for us and it's good to go.
Right. But there's just been so much stuff that's gone on with it. I mean, you take a look at New Hampshire has done something which a lot of other states. Back in the 70s, we did some social engineering here in the state with the elderly tax exemption to help people stay in their homes. I mean, I was responsible for a lot of this. The bill that the law that we passed in Rochester was a bill that I brought in. It was opposed by the current mayor at the time, John Shaw, but he only said we can't vote against this because we vote against this, all the old people will be upset with us, so we have to vote for it. But he said it was a bad thing to do. He was right, and maybe in that case, I mean, we do provide tax cuts for elderly who are on the very low income scale, and you get a tax cut on your property taxes. But what it's done is it's shifted the burden of taxes to young families and everybody else. And what we've created is a state where, since every town has this now, and we've expanded the number of people that can get it through the legislature, what has happened is that you're seeing people staying in their homes longer.
Right.
They're not basically going into smaller homes or nursing homes in some cases. They're staying in their homes, and they're not making those homes available to young families, which means that it's causing the price of everything else to go up. And then it's creating a situation where we're becoming one of the oldest states in the country. And we have more people, quite honestly, retiring here than just about any place else, I think, other than Florida and Arizona, maybe. But it's very, it's hurt our economy in the state because we're not bringing in more young families. Rochester doesn't bring in more young families. And then there's just a lot of reasons. We're giving tax breaks to seniors and retired veterans and other things that, some of it may be needed and deserved, but the thing is that it's impacting young families in our communities. And they're not moving here because of that, or they're moving away after they get here, find out that, New Hampshire isn't exactly what we expected. It's actually far more expensive to live here, even though AOT is saying how New Hampshire is the freest and least expensive state, and they look at all these numbers and everything else. Yeah, if you're at the top of the scale, it's very affordable for you to live in New Hampshire because you're not paying any taxes on all that excessive income that's basically unearned income that you're earning. You don't have to work for it. It just sort of comes into your bank account every day. I think we're the fifth richest community in the country, fifth richest state in the country. We're just ahead of Connecticut.
Right.
And or just behind Connecticut, I think. And the others are mostly California, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire.
Right.
And that's a concern.
Yeah, most people are going to make their wealth outside of the state and then come and retire here because of our beautiful trees.
Yes.
And that's a real threat. I mean, I even get a discount being a veteran. I think that we should make those discounts, but I also understand how that makes the ledger kind of look lopsided and everything else. Yeah. I wish there was a way, again, we could tax rich people and corporations appropriately.
There are. We could just cut in taxes on them. We're going in the opposite directions of cutting taxes on those people. And they say that, every time you raise taxes on Walmart, their prices go up. And I say, well, how come we've been cutting taxes and their prices haven't gone down?
Right.
So that just doesn't hold water.
Well, you get so many issues too, right? I mean, for profit, of course. I mean, they need to make their money and everything, but most of their people are on SNAP benefits. It's corporate welfare. And I just feel like we need to get back to taking care of the people and not the rich people and corporations. And I feel like this is class warfare. It is. Plain and simple. At this point in my life, I've been alive for almost 50 years. It's been class warfare the entire time. It's just, you couldn't see it before because we were never connected like we are today. Yeah. Everybody has access to the internet almost, we're still working on that. But I think the reality is, and this is the way I see it, it's a personal opinion, but if you vote Republican, you are pro-corporation and pro-wealthy. Whether you're part of that group or not, that's what you are supporting. And the Democrats are a little different. We don't organize the same. But for the most part, if you're a Democrat, you're for the people. I don't know a lot of Democrats that get excited about raising taxes We've just been told that we do by the other team,
Right.
because they raise the taxes, but they need a scapegoat.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people have said, "Oh, you're just going to raise my taxes." Brother, ma'am, whatever. I live in the same vicinity as you. I'm also going to pay those taxes. Now, it says, there was a study maybe about 2 months ago, I think, that I read that said, in order to survive here in New Hampshire, you have to make a minimum of, I think it was right around 120,000.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact number,
Right.
but roughly 120 grand to survive here.
In the last 20 years, it's become about 20% or $17,000 more expensive to live in New Hampshire than it does in any other than in other places. It's gotten more expensive. New Hampshire things haven't become more affordable. Things have become more expensive.
Right.
And a lot of it is due to property taxes, in that the cost of home ownership is more, and there are a number of factors. You take a look at energy costs here in New Hampshire, because we've had a terrifyingly bad energy policy under Sununu for years, where other communities are starting to see benefits from solar and wind and thermal.
Right.
We actually discourage it. Now they're discouraging it from Washington even more.
Which is crazy to me.
Yeah. We were looking at the county level. At the county, we were looking at putting up a solar farm,
Right.
which would have been able to basically provide, with battery power, would have been able to provide all the power that the county needed, which would reduce costs for the county. And it would have been built we had two choices. Either we could build it ourselves, which is an upfront cost, but then zero energy cost after that. Or what we do is we let a private company come in, which would have basically zero upfront cost, but would have a continual cost down the road, but far cheaper than what we would pay for through Eversource or any of the other companies that are out there doing it, and would be 100% renewable. So those were, and Barrington's representative, Len Turcotte, killed those.
Right.
So, the man is horrendous. And I don't know how many people from Barrington watch your show, but if they do, they need to vote him out of office, because he's killing things. He was the leader of the pack that stopped us from building a new nursing home.
Yeah.
And this is something, when you take a look at what's going on at the county level as well, because legislative representatives are also on the county delegation, and we lost getting a new nursing home by one vote every time. And they said, well, they wanted to build a Taj Mahal. No, we wanted to build a facility that was a little bit better than the factory that we're putting in people right now. If nobody's been to that nursing home, they don't know what it is, give me a call. I will be happy to take them there.
Which is an interesting take on its own, because when I'm older, right? I'm already old, so when I'm
You're
70,
just a kid.
Well, yeah, I feel old, but
Yeah.
when I get to my 70s and 80s, and I'm not able to take care of myself, or somebody like me,
Sure.
why should I have second rate anything? I've lived my whole life. I've given back to my community. I've served, XYZ. Why are we not treating our elderly population better? They came before us. I honestly, as a younger person, I feel like it's a sign of wealth when we do take care of our own, right? Whether they're younger, like free lunches in school, or taking care of our elderly, by giving them the last section of their life. We should be giving them everything.
Right.
And to me, it feels so selfish when we complain and we call, tax this and tax that. We you're going to be old eventually. Yeah. We all go through these stages. And when I'm old, I want somebody to take care of me. I don't want to live in some jail cell-esque type of room.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, this is the thing. When you go and you take a look at what we have, I mean, people say that, well, it's just the people who didn't prepare themselves for getting old. They didn't save up enough money so that they could go into a nice place. I mean, I have some people I know that one particular friend that I had who basically went into a extended care facility, and it cost her basically $500,000 down. And she's going into this place where she has her own unit, and she's guaranteed. She pays so much a year too, and after that, but she goes into this home and she gets nursing care, she gets meal care, she gets other things, but it cost her $500,000 to get in there. And then, she's guaranteed that she'll be there for the rest of her life. And as she goes through, right now, she can take care of herself with a lot of things, to a place where she needs care, and then where she needs a lot of care, and then when she's in hospice after that, and at the end of her life. There are people who worked hard most of them, particularly people who worked in the family. And that's when I was born and brought up here in Rochester. My family actually is in the history books. The Grassie family is in the history books of having moved here in 1857. We were the first Italian family to move to the city of Rochester. I didn't know that. My dad said we were the second, but I found out he was wrong. And I wish I had known that before I would have been able to tell him. But and my grandparent, on my mother's side, the Drapo family, they lived in, my grandmother was born in Canada. My grandfather was from up north here in New Hampshire. And they moved to New Hampshire. They moved to Rochester and they worked in the mills. And, so they didn't have they made enough money to buy a home and to support a family. And that was the extent of it. They didn't have a lot of the traditional New England family or particularly New Hampshire family that worked in the mills didn't put $500,000 in the bank.
Right.
In fact, just keeping the roof over the head was a struggle every paycheck. I remember my grandfather, when I was a kid, make $50 for a week's pay. Right. And that was good pay. But it wasn't a lot of money to be able to save anything. It basically kept groceries on the table. It provided a meal for you every day. And it put gas in your car as a teenager, and you had to get, do a paper route for anything else you needed to do. And, but a car cost $100 for a kid like me. Right. So you could do that kind of stuff. And I saved up a lot of paper route money to buy a car. But the thing is that what you've done is these families who have no money in the bank or not a lot of money in the bank, if they go into a private nursing home, that nursing home is going to take that bank account and going to take their Social Security check and whatever else they have for assets. If they've got a house, they're going to take possession of the house and they're going to basically drain it down until there's no money left. And then when they run out of money and the insurance is only paying the bare minimum for them to be in that facility, they're going to say, you really need to take your parents to another home. And unless you've got money to take care of your parents, the place that they're going to end up is at Riverside Rest Home because that's the county home. Yeah. And that's the only place that will and has to take them if there's space available. And the thing is that if you take a look at the other counties in the state that have refurbished their homes in recent years, ours is over 50 years old. But you take a look at the other counties in the state that have refurbished their homes, a lot of the work that they do now is dementia patients because a lot of these private homes don't want dementia patients.
No, they're very difficult.
They're very difficult. So they have them here at the facility in Stratford County. We have a dementia wing. And this is a factory. You go in and you look at the place and it looks like an old rundown school building. Yep. It's brick walls, just concrete block walls, nothing. They're all painted yellow. And they try to decorate as best they can. But we also run the top rated homes in the state. And it's not because of our facility, it's because of our people. The people there, and I don't know how they do it because I've had conversations with them. They like to come to work and work with the people. They look at the people that are there as their parents and their friends. And they say, we want the best for them. And they come through the door and they're so cheerful. And you say, how can you be cheerful in the facility that you're in? They say, we're just gotten used to it. It's what we have. You go to some of these other places, and there's one up in Carroll County. You go up and the home in Ossipee, and you go in, and it looks like there's a living room with a kitchenette and everything. And the rooms everybody has their own room. And here in Stratford County, we have 2 people to a room and 42 people to one bath shower facility. So you have to schedule your bath shower. And if you have an accident, if there's an emergency where they have to get somebody in quick because they may have soiled themselves or whatever, other people have to get backed off their appointed time. And so you may have somebody that, and our age, or people my age, they go in, they want to shower more than once a week. And, and just for hygiene purposes, if you don't keep up with hygiene, there are infections that occur. There are other things that occur. And we can't, 42 people for one bath shower facility. That's what we have. In Ossipee, they have a shower facility for every person. So if they need to be, they can get in there immediately. They can take a shower every day if they want. They can come out and they can be in a living room type situation. They have what they call a movie theater. It's not really a movie theater. It's a big room where they can have parties in. They do training in. They have a screen that drops down from the ceiling so they can show a movie if they want to do something for their people. It's not a movie theater. They have a hairdresser. It just says hairdresser on the other side, but it's just a room where they have a chair that somebody who has dementia goes in and feels comfortable. They said, well, you're putting up a mini golf course. This is Len Turcotte. Turcotte's big thing. This seems to be the anti-Len Turcotte show, I fear, that I'm doing here today. But he's the man that just kills everything. He says that we're putting up a mini golf course. No, we're putting a putting green out there that's a place that we don't have to mow that grass. It'll be an artificial turf type stuff with 2 little holes in it, so that somebody who maybe golfed for most of their life and is up there with mild dementia will feel a little bit of sense of themselves by being able to take a putter and go out and putt that thing around. We'll have an area which will be a dog park. So if the person gets put into a home and they have a dog and their family wants to bring their dog to visit with them, they can go outside and visit with that person. They'll have a garden area so that people who are used to going out and working with flowers and maybe can still do that regardless of their dementia or their physical disabilities can go out and do that.
Right.
And it's just making people feel it more at home. The main office at the place in Merrimack, it says bank. And that's where they do their cashing and people can go out and buy them. They actually have a cafe when people come to visit. They actually have a room off the side that's sort of a chapel. One of the things that was said to me one time, and I remember this very vividly, is that when somebody comes to the nursing home, you're there to visit your mother or your father. And you get there and they're saying, "Who are you? I don't know who you are." And they say, "Well, I'm your son, or I'm your daughter." And they say, "Well, I don't know who you are," and what they do is they sit there and it emotionally affects them. They'll go out in their car and maybe cry or whatever. They'll come back in and say, "Let me give it another shot." And they'll walk in. They say, "Where have you been? How are you? Where have you been? And, I love you and you don't visit me enough." And having a place where they don't have to go out into their car or out into a hallway, which is bleak and desolate, and with a bunch of other people sitting around, but having a room that you can go to and you can stop and you can think and you can pray is important for not only the people who live there, but the families who have people that live there.
Agreed.
And these are things that we're trying to do, is to make it so that when people are put into the nursing home, that it's something that they feel comfortable there, that they can feel that their life hasn't changed to an extent where they're in a jail cell, like you said, because it's bleak. The walls just have nothing there, and unless you bring stuff in, you're going to have nothing there. And some people, if they don't have families here because they've lived here all day, and maybe their children have moved away, but they don't want to leave the area, and they get put in there because they can't physically take care of themselves, or mentally they have dementia, and they get put in there because they have no resources.
Right.
And they've spent it all on medical care before they went into the nursing home, and they've they reverse mortgage on their house just for medical care. They've got nothing left. That's the home that has to take them, and we should treat them with some respect because they've given all their life to our society, and we don't. We lost the votes in the legislature in our county legislature by 1 vote. To treat people with respect by 1 vote, straight party line, and Len Turcotte was the leader of the side that voted against, and we lost by 1 vote.
No, and I know that this isn't a pick on Len Turcotte gig here, but it is important to note that he pops up quite often as the bad guy. Yeah. Right. But if you're on that side, maybe he comes up as the good guy, right? Depending on
well, I don't know. I think he lost his committee chairmanship this year, so they don't even like him anymore.
They don't even like him.
They don't even like him anymore. I don't know what's going on over there.
My only interaction with him was he was trying to blast me for my stance on abortion during the candidacy. And I didn't back down because I still believe like I'm pro-choice and pro-life. And by saying that, I mean, one, woman's body, her choice, right? That's not my place. But I'm also pro-life because after that baby's born, I want the mom to have WIC. I want the kids to be educated. I want the lunch to be taken care of at the school. I want healthcare to be a right. I want that human being that had no choice coming into this world. Nobody asked me. Nobody asked you. Nobody asked anybody that's watching this, hey, do you want a chance at life on Earth? Nobody had that opportunity. We're part of the wealthiest country in the world. I was part of the strongest Air Force in the world. Yet my grandparents, both grandmothers, Alzheimer's, passed away in nursing care. And so many other people had to go through what you just described. And it's where's the dignity in that? Where's that end of life care that your community should be embracing you, saying, we've enjoyed our time with you, let's see you out on a good note. here in America, I feel like we've been worked so hard. Everything's been taken piecemeal from us over the decades, you know, whether it was Reagan sending our jobs overseas and our mills shut down here in New England, or even what's currently happening where, you know, SNAP benefits are just a political football, and, you know, it's more culture war. It's everything except taking care of Americans.
Right.
And I just don't understand. It's here in New Hampshire, so much so. I read it all the time, like I said, and I'm out there talking to people, and it's so frustrating, and I don't know how we get past that as a community, but I think we need to take care of our older people. They were our cornerstone. They're the reason why we're here.
Right.
And to vote no and seeing them have to live that life, we just, right now in the House of Representatives, they just said, we want to give the military $901 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, as a retired veteran, hey, thank you. I appreciate that. But that's not my only concern. My only concern is everybody around me. If I'm the only one standing, what do I have? It's not much.
Yep. And you know something, and that's something, they want to give the military that kind of dollars, and yet they're cutting back on support services for the military veterans.
Right.
And I was at a mental health meeting, Stratford County Mental Health Alliance, their meeting this last month, and I brought up, they were talking about how cutbacks at the federal level are reducing services for mental health services. And I have a personal experience because a family member of mine, my son, is with the New Hampshire National Guard, and he basically runs the program for family support services in New Hampshire. And his program is being eliminated. So they're basically saying that funding for family support, when a soldier leaves, who's taking care of their family, who's setting up and making sure all the arrangements are in place.
Right.
When that family's gone, when that soldier's gone and on deployment for a year, who's checking in on that family to make sure they're not having any problems, so that soldier doesn't have to worry that his family's having problems, if they need childcare, if they've got educational issues, if they've got other things, medical issues that need to be taken care of. And when that soldier comes back, if that soldier has PTSD or any kind of issues, and, you know, particularly one thing my son ran into as well when he came back one time is there's a gap between when you get out of the regular Army, since you've been deployed, and get back on National Guard TRICARE, that there's a gap where technically you have no insurance.
Right. Right.
And how can we make sure that that doesn't occur for as many soldiers as possible? We know they're coming back. Get the paperwork ready to go so that, you know, as soon as it can be signed and put into the system, they're in the system, so that when they show up at home, there's no gap in that insurance. And then beyond that, sometimes PTSD doesn't manifest itself right away when they come home, and it takes time for those soldiers to understand what's happening, and that it may not be that first day or first week that they're back home because there's so much other excitement going on. But when they finally have to get back into the routines of life, that they say that's when the issues start to manifest themselves, and there's nobody there for them. And that's what his program was doing, is to check on those people, to make sure that the family still had, you know, everything was okay. And if there were any problems, making sure that those soldiers got, and the families got, the support services they need. That program has been eliminated. And when I said that, the mental health people said, yeah, that's a big concern, because now we in the private sector
have to take over,
have to stop picking that up, and we don't know who those people are, and we don't have the experience dealing with that the military has had dealing with that. And in the program that my son operates, you know, these are one of the things that they did. And then he was just basically, from the military, he was just given his walking papers and said, you know, we no longer want you in the U.S., you know, in the New Hampshire National Guard, because you've been there for 25 years and we're killing your program. And, oh, by the way, we'll offer you another job someplace else, but you got to get this training. You got to get it done in 6 months. And it was like, you know, there's no way I can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I was fortunate because I was active duty for 20 years, so I didn't have to go back and forth, right, on orders and having to worry about my orders for more than 29 days, you know, going back and forth because the insurance and the way they cover it. And I imagine it's just a much harder life. Yeah. I didn't live that myself, but I've met plenty of Guard and Reserve individuals that do struggle, right, because their life can be upended in a matter of a phone call. Hey, you're going to Afghanistan. You're going to Iraq for a year. Let your family know and tell your job.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's what he was getting. You know, he had 3 deployments that were year-long deployments into combat zones. And a couple of other deployments outside of combat zones, which were, you know, get to see the sights of Europe,
right,
or or the Arabian Peninsula. He got to go to those places that weren't in combat zones.
Yeah.
But he also had 3 into combat zones in Iraq and Kuwait.
3 years is a long time to be without your family.
Yeah, and that's 3 different times. We had to tell him having to stop going because every time he came back, they had another kid.
Very typical, by the way.
Yeah, we have 5 children. My wife had 2, as I said before, and I have 3 with my wife, and we have 18 grandchildren. So when you want to talk about choice and right to life, the thing is that we have never. We've supported whatever our children have their desires were.
Yeah.
And they 18 grandchildren, and I'm not sure. I think it's 6 great grandchildren right now, but I'm not sure.
You are surrounded by love.
So yeah,
to say the least.
Christmas is expensive.
I can imagine. At that point, you just buy a group ticket, right?
Yeah, I wish we could.
I want to talk a little bit about that VA stuff, for those soldiers that come back, because this is definitely a personal issue for me. I got to live a little bit of the life, but of course everybody has different. But right now, I saw my doctor at the VA in Manchester 1 month ago for my annual, and I asked her a question. I said, because it's a small hospital,
yep.
And I noticed that I haven't been able to get appointments. My community care has been taking a little bit longer to address. So I asked my new doctor, because a year ago, my old doctor for 7 years was forced out of the VA. So I had to learn a whole nother person, and I don't even know if she's going to be around there, but I've been waiting almost 6 months from the time I requested a pain management appointment. I finally will get to talk to my pain doctor at the end of this month on a telecall. Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine how other veterans with even more serious items are dealing with this, whether it's Guard, Reserve, Active, whatever obviously the VA doesn't treat active, but we all have to leave the military at some point, and we all need to be taken care of. And right now the VA is in bad shape. And I know Doug Collins will tell you how awesome it is and veterans first and this and that, but it's all like, you can only lie about it so much, because I am personally affected along with a lot of other veterans. When I go into those waiting rooms and I sit, I'm with guys that have PTSD. I'm with guys that have been multiple tours to whichever bad country war that you want to choose, right? Whether it's Vietnam or today's wars. But the problem is these people aren't being taken care of. And it seems to be pretty common, not just with military, but everybody. Nobody's getting taken care of right now. For the last year at least, like, I can say I was better off a year ago. I'd imagine most people were better off a year ago. And it's only going to get worse because we have at least 3 more years of this stuff.
Yeah, and that's one of the concerns that I have. I mean, you've taken a look at what's going on with anti-DEI initiatives in the Pentagon, and basically saying that unless you have a warrior ethos, we don't want you. And we're not going to pay attention to you. And DEI, we're going to get rid of everybody, no matter what sex or color you are. If you're the wrong sex or color, we're going to get rid of you because you're not a real warrior. And you're no longer a warrior. You're out of the service now. So you are no longer a priority.
You're right.
And that $900 billion that's going towards the military is for warriors.
Yeah.
It gets a president who wants a peace award, and he takes and changes the Department of Defense to Department of War, and talks about warriors, and we need to get out there and kill people, and he wants a peace prize. I mean, it just is absurd that people who support him agree with that bullshit.
I think there's a good amount of people that are not on board with that, for sure. I think, when I wore that uniform, I'm a retired Master Sergeant, and I was extremely proud. I served 8 years in South Korea. I lived in Saudi Arabia for a year, right? I put work on my boots, and that whole warrior ethos stuff is crazy to me. That's what people say when they're desperate for that, please love me. Yeah. I think you're warriors. We are all warriors. No, you're not. You're not. You've been assigned from, in this case, I'm talking about Hegseth now, because he went from Fox News personality to defense,
secretary.
Like this,
it's not war secretary. You got to get it right now. You got to get war secretary.
War
it's not
secretary.
defense.
Yeah,
it's war secretary.
Right. And it's absurd because it sends such a bad message about our military to our allies, to our new recruits, to the old veterans that served. It's just really hard to see the military be controlled in this manner, right? And misused in this, like having American soldiers on our streets. Like, I can understand if we were in a flood, like, during Hurricane Katrina and all that stuff, but they're actively policing us.
Yeah.
That is not the military I served in.
No.
The military I served in, I was very proud to do humanitarian lifts. I was very proud to be, serving and representing my country overseas, or even when I was here in the United States. And it's been really hard to see the VA slowly, well, I don't even know if I can say slowly, but dismantled, at least to some degree. And I understand that my healthcare is for profit, and let's move me out to the civilian world so they can put money. Anyway.
Dave Stevens was a sergeant major, first sergeant major with the Hampshire National Guard, and he got sent to Afghanistan. And he said one of the proudest things you do is building schools, but for the Afghan children.
That's a good feel, right?
And, but the thing is what we let it happen after the fact is that we just sort of let it go,
right? And
he said that a lot of the efforts that we made over there didn't stay.
That's what happens when you negotiate with the Taliban.
Yeah, and we tried a nation build,
right?
And that was the other thing. I think things in Iraq probably would have been better if we just left them the way they were, than the way the changes we made. And now it's a disaster still over there, and it's something that we can't be out there nation building. But that's
as somebody that ran for rep, and I had nobody to guide me. I had no idea what I was getting into, and you were a breath of fresh air. Right.
Thank you.
And because you have already been seasoned, you came into the office, you offered help, you wanted to get in. Like, how do we make everybody here successful? And that really, opened up my eyes that you had so much to give. And so I wanted to ask you why I had you here. How do we get people in New Hampshire that, obviously, for the most part, you have to be retired. You have to be independent, wealthy to run for our legislation. But we do have some younger folks that do have ways around it. They do serve. Cassie Levesque is a perfect example. How do we get more of these great young folks into our legislature? How do we embrace, like, for you in particular, as the soon-to-be Rochester mayor, how will you try to encourage young people to run for these positions locally, legislatively, and beyond? Well,
one of the things that if you go back to when I started, when I was young, started as a 22-year-old student at UNH who was getting involved in government. And I had run for the school board locally because I had an interest in doing something, serving locally the year before. Lost, ran for the state house. I got into Concord, and there were about 40 other young people there that year. Back in 1975, there were a lot of young people that came into the house at that time. And a little story, just off the track a little bit. Occasionally, those of us who served back in the mid-'70s in the legislature get together for a Christmas party. And this year, actually tomorrow, I'm traveling to Manchester to get together with reps who served in the 70s. And I actually got an email from one of them and saying, Chuck, you're the only one still left doing this shit. And congratulations, by the way, on getting elected mayor. But how the hell do you do this? We did it for 5-6 years back in the 4-6 years back in the 70s. But we had to do other things, and we never got back into it. We never had the burning in the gut to continue to do this stuff. I always say, serving in the legislature, the mafia, they keep pulling you back in. You try to get out, they keep pulling you back in.
Keep pulling you in.
I served 10 years back in the 70s, and then I took time off because I had to earn a living to support a family. And then I came back in my later years after I had left the planning business and had time to do it. But back in the 70s when I was there and we had 40 people, we had about 40 young people. I actually organized a young legislators caucus in the legislature, which is now sort of the same thing as the progressive caucus is there, but we had Democrats and Republicans at the time because there wasn't so much of the division that we had back then, that Democrats and Republicans, you have the liberals and you have the conservatives, we were all moderates, it seems. People were working, and you had people on both sides, but we could get together and find common ground. And I organized this group, which was basically dealing with issues that dealt with youth, which were youth services in the university systems and schools and healthcare for young people. And we talked about those things, and we supported bills bipartisanly. And so that was something that I did back then. And then I took a long time off from the House, and I got back in, and I noticed that the first year I was back, the Democrats were in. I'm trying to think, that first year the Democrats were in charge. Actually, we had the majority in the House, and I had a whole row of young reps. I was in the back of Section 5, and I was set on the end. And they said, "Chuck, you got to keep them in line." And I said, no problem. And I had a couple young, a lot of young reps. Heath Howard was one of those reps that was there. And I, when it came to, and they had questions, I was there to answer their questions for them.
Yeah.
And as you know, with the training that we went through for new state rep candidates, I was there to answer your questions. Mm-hmm. What do you expect? How do you do something? How do you maneuver the system? And I worked with them. And then there was the Progressive Caucus had been organized as well, but there was a lot of fighting going on in the Progressive Caucus. And I'm sitting home one day. This was the next term. I'm sitting at home one day, and I get a call from one of those young reps who's saying, "We're here trying to organize a Progressive Caucus, Chuck." And I'm watching a football game, and I'm saying, well, I have no interest in that. You guys, and it had been really a battle between two of the leaders, and it was just becoming a shit show. I wanted nothing to do with the Progressive Caucus whatsoever. And they said, "You seem to be able to bring people together, and you understand the system." The joke one time, the minority leader of the House got up and said, "I don't expect any of you here to know what's going on in this House. Is there anybody here who knows what's going, how to maneuver this system, because it's so unreal?" And I raised my hand. They said, "Chuck, put your hand down," because I was the only person in the room who says, "Yeah, I know how to operate this system.
Right.
I've been doing it." And the thing is that they said, "Will you chair the Progressive Caucus?" And I said, "I really don't want to do this because I have no interest in doing this." They said, "We need somebody who's a stabilizing force. And you're the guy who took the time to explain everything for us and to help us figure out what the best strategy was on things." And, I had like six young reps that were in my aisle with me. And so I says, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it, but under certain circumstances." And they met my circumstances, and I said, "I will help chair that." And what I did is I brought, and they're mostly young reps, and we had a few older reps come in. But, we basically took what was a factional, fractured caucus and brought it together. And those people that didn't want to participate and who wanted to be chaos agents, we threw them out, or we basically made no room for them at the table.
Right.
And we brought people together to talk about issues and to try to solve problems. And we had some really tough situations. And leadership in the House said, whenever we have a situation which is difficult, we're going to come see you. And they did. They called me. I actually had one rep who I called one day because I wanted to congratulate him on a speech he gave on the floor. And I said, "Hey, Pete, how you doing?" He says, "Am I in trouble?" I says, "No, you're not in trouble." He says, "Usually when you make a phone call, somebody's in trouble." And he says, "No, you're not in trouble. I just want to tell you did a great job." And it was an older rep, so it wasn't one of the young kids. But when we had during COVID, I had a member of leadership, one of the younger reps had shouted out something, and that one of the senior members came over and started yelling at the younger rep, had her in tears. And a couple of other reps were very upset about the whole incident. I went over to see that senior rep who was in leadership, and I said, "Don't you ever talk to one of those younger reps, the members of my caucus, basically, like that. If you have an issue, you come see me, and I will talk to them. Because you don't get anywhere by yelling and screaming at them. You get anywhere by explaining what they did and what the ramifications of what they did were."
Right.
And that's what I was strong at doing, working with people. And I think, one of the things why I worked 10 years in the Rochester school districts dealing with special needs students, and I dealt with some of the most violent students in the elementary level. And I always said that, that my experience as a special ed working with violent children gave me everything I needed to serve in the New Hampshire House. So because I'm dealing with violent children most of the time here, so on both sides of the aisle. But it was, I gained their respect because I was always there to be able to. I was their father or the grandfather that they needed. They needed somebody they could come and they needed somebody to console them or to guide them, to provide help to them. And I've always done that. I mean, back in the 1980s, I started this program called the New Hampshire Youth Leadership Foundation. And what we did is we brought the U. O'Brien Youth Leadership Foundation, which dealt with high school sophomores and providing leadership skills. And we'd have an annual seminar, and we would do other weekend seminars throughout the year with high school sophomores and they would interact with community leaders and business leaders in the state. And we would have discussions on topics that were far beyond what normally a high school sophomore would talk about. But these kids were sent to us because they were looked at as being potential leaders in their schools. They weren't always the leader in their school, but somebody who had potential that the teachers saw, this person needs that little more guidance and maybe a little kick in the butt to move them to become a leader in their school. And I'm always proud to say we've had a number of kids. The mayor of Somersworth, former mayor of Somersworth, Dana Hilliard, was one of my students early on in the program. Matt Wilhelm, the Democratic leader, former Democratic leader in the Hampshire House, was a U. O'Brien Youth Leadership kid. These kids, there are many others in the state. Dover City Council, Fergus Cullen was a Hobie kid. So we have them from all sides of the political spectrum. They weren't just, and I didn't just bring in liberal Democrats to talk to these kids. I brought in business leaders, I brought in community leaders, regardless of what their political affiliation was, so that these kids can get some experience and talk with leaders. And we had a lot of discussions, and what we try to instill in them is service to community, and being responsible for what goes on in their community, taking some leadership role, being an impetus for making their communities better. Yeah. And I think that most of the kids that went through that program, and I did that for 15 years. I started the program. I served as the president of the board. I was an executive director of the program for most of those times, and we were successful. And the program's still going on in the state. I haven't been involved with it now for about 20 years, but it's still going on in the state. Mm-hmm. And it's something that that I think I was proud of, working with these high school students and following some of their careers throughout as they moved on to offices or business leadership positions and doing different things in New Hampshire. And I looked at that training and special ed training at the elementary level, working with kids, in that one of the things that I always try to do is just show patience with what's going on in Concord, and not getting frustrated with, you may not understand, but let's continue to talk about this. And as a planner, I found that being a strong point as well, is that sometimes you don't get there by being confrontational. You don't get to where we come together on something. By being confrontational, you come there by questioning and being sympathetic to their concerns, and actually probing a little bit to find out, what's your real issue here? Right. Why are we having this problem? And how can we solve this problem? Where do we have to meet in the center someplace so that we can move forward together instead of separate? I don't see a lot of that happening in government, and particularly at the state. I see now we have two camps, and they're very strong. And the Free Staters have taken over one and made them almost to the point of hatefulness. And then the other side is trying to say, we want to compromise, but there's nobody to compromise with. Right. And so they're looked at weak on this side. And in some cases, they may be weak on this side because they're looking at compromise as being too, but when you can't talk, what do there's nobody on the one side that wants to listen to anybody on the other side. And when the positions of the other side are just totally opposed to every moral belief that the people on the other side have, how can you find common ground? There's a lot of groups that we talked with, and there was one group that I was appointed to participate with. They had like 6 Democrats and 6 Republicans, and I was appointed by the Democratic leader to join in with this group to sit down because they figured, as chairman of the Progressive Caucus, man, they can't get any further left than me. Put me on this group that if you've got conservative Republicans on the other side, how are we going to find common ground? Well, we found common ground while we were talking there. We got to be good buddies. Yeah. But as soon as we walked out of that room, it was hate again.
Right, they put their sports cap back on.
They put their sports cap back on. And it was like, you've got to be kidding me. We just talked about how we need to work together, that we can't have a position where, this is my position and I'm not going to move. You have to come to me. Right. I'm saying, I can't come all the way to you. You need to come halfway to me. And they refuse. And there was a term I used, and I just can't remember what it is right now, but maybe in the next 20 minutes I'll remember it. But the thing is that was the thing, that when people are so set in their ways and they don't even want to discuss the alternative, we're never going to get to the center. And I think that's what I try to do with young reps. I used to Cassie and I used to pick her up and bring her into to Concord every day, and we'd talk. And she's a wonderful girl, and lady, young, wonderful young woman who's done a lot since she was a Girl Scout. I met with a Girl Scout troop recently, in fact, and I really didn't talk enough about what Cassie did. They wanted to meet with the new mayor, and so I was talking about what the mayor does and everything else, but I should have brought up more about what Cassie did, because she was one of them when she started her issue to eliminate child marriage in New Hampshire. And she had a lot of battles, and she kept getting knocked down. And sometimes we would have those discussions coming home. She says, how can I put up with these people who just keep knocking me down? They keep beating me. They don't want to do anything. I says, you're right. You're never going to meet them. They're never going to meet you halfway.
Right.
They're never going to find a place. They just wanted to kill her bill every year. And finally, slowly, we were able to pick them off one at a time. And bring them onto her side of the equation. That's saying, particularly female voters on the Republican side that say, yeah, I don't want my 14-year-old daughter marrying a 21-year-old or a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old.
And she's somebody that has accomplished so much.
She has.
When we first moved here, she ran for the first time. She was 18. My whole family voted for her. It took her 3 terms to get child marriage banned, which was huge. She hit national news because of it. And then the following year, this year, the Republicans are trying to undo that by using things like, well, what if your 17-year-old daughter wants to marry somebody that's in the military?
Bingo.
Then why don't you have her wait that out? It's not that serious. To me, it's amazing how the political footballs get moved around here because they don't really care about what the excuse is. They're just trying to undo things. And they're harmful for our communities. I don't want child marriage. I don't think many people want child marriage. My mom got married to my dad when she was 15. He was 21. We're talking about back in the 70s. We had different views on our pretty much everything at that point. But our kids deserve an opportunity to go and get an education, to become and be kids and young adults without having to be married. Anyway, side content, but her, Heath Howard, which I'm sure a lot of people hear these names right now. They're important, not necessarily them per se. I mean, they are, but that whole generation, that youth, we want that into our state because they'll help guide the future youth. Hopefully they'll stay in the state because those folks have made this a better place to live, raise a family, and do so much more. Can I just ask, for Rochester itself, there's so many negative things that people can pull out about Rochester. What's the worst part of Rochester in your view? Do you have one? I know it's so easy to say, well, I everything's beautiful, but there must be like the one dark belly underside of Rochester.
I think drug use is certainly a problem that every community has. I mean, we have drug use, and we've spoken about homelessness quite a bit already today. But drug use is an issue. We had a lot of, there seemed to be a conduit from Lowell, Mass, or Lawrence, Mass, to Lawrence or Lowell areas to Rochester for drugs. But I mean, that seems to be all the way from Lawrence to Rochester. It seems that there's drugs all the way through the whole road coming up. It's almost, I don't know if it's 125 or coming up 93 and then scooting over. But the thing is that that's something we have. We have the socioeconomic background of Rochester is low. I mean, it's most of the people, families that, my parents, my at least my mother's side of the family, worked in the mills. Worked in the shoe shops, works in the box shops. People would probably say, what the hell's a box shop? But, they used to make the boxes to put the shoes in. And
somebody had to fold them.
Yeah. But it was wooden box shop boxes that they made.
Okay,
so they were crates.
You,
basically, they made crates. They made crates for things. And, but the graduation level at Spalding High School is very low. And, we're talking about sending people into trades, and we have the Credo Vocational Center there, which has been relatively successful in trying to send people off into the trades. But when you take a look at college education, we're below most of the communities around. And that's something that the Trump administration is making it more difficult, and the federal government has made it more difficult for us to be able to afford education. In New
Even the
Hampshire,
state.
the Republicans have made sure to make it so it's all virtually impossible for anybody in New Hampshire, and particularly people in Rochester, who to get jobs or to get an education. You have to carry a significant amount of debt if you want to do that, and they've almost made it so that because of politics over the years too. Gina Shaheen wanted to go in and speak to the classes at Spalding High School. And so many parents complained about that because they said it's political, that they told her she couldn't come and speak. She's our U.S. Senator.
Yes.
You'd think it would be an honor to have her come in and talk.
Think, right? She's previous governor.
Yep.
No matter how you feel about her, she's held some of the top positions.
I was in the cafeteria. They have a cafeteria and a culinary program that they have there at the school, and the principal was there, and this was right after my tie vote. And he says, I got a lot of interest from the students in that vote. And he says, would you come in and talk to our social studies classes? I said, I'd love to. I'd love to talk to your social studies classes. I said, but in Rochester, that could be a problem for you.
Right.
And he says, what do you mean? I says, check it out. Talk to the administration. Talk to a few other people.
Run that by somebody.
Run that by somebody before I come in because I don't want you to get in trouble.
Right.
And he calls me back and he says, I can't have you come in and talk to social studies classes. He says, you were right. You're on the left and I got a lot of parents on the right who would be screaming if I brought you in. And I says, I know because I've tried to speak at classes before and I'm not very popular with some of the parents there. So, they will bitch and complain about having a Marxist come in and talk to your kids. I'm not a Marxist. In fact, when you take a look at my city council record and my work on the planning board, I'm probably one of the most pro-capitalist council members and planning board members they ever had in the city of Rochester.
In fairness, most people calling you a Marxist or me, they probably don't even know what a Marxist is.
They don't even know what it means.
Right?
Yeah, right.
It's just bad person. They're dumb. They're bad.
That's right.
Which is unfortunate, but is what it is in today's environment.
Right. And anyways, so he said, we have this group that is sort of not affiliated with the school, but they're a group that talks about political things. And maybe I can get you in there. And, I never end up speaking, but because I never followed up with it. But the thing is, it's been that way forever in the city. There seems to be a contingent of people in the city who they're all on Facebook.
Yes.
They don't want to encourage education in the community. Better to be homeschooled and ignorant about the world than be educated. There are a lot of people who do support, and I would tell you that in the past, budget overrides for education have always been supported by the public. We don't vote on them, but people who voted for them did not get thrown out of office because they voted for a budget override for education. And we have a public hearing on the schools. We have a lot of people who come in and oppose any increases in the budget for the schools because they say it's a terrible schools. And then we have a lot of parents who say, my kid's doing okay. We love our teachers. You need to give them the support and resources that they need to be successful. And you're not giving them enough.
Right.
So there are families who really feel that it's important to see, but you have a strong vocal minority who are against those type of things. And they say, send them out to be plumbers, send them out to be electricians. Don't send them out to be teachers and lawyers and doctors and politicians. Right. Because, we don't want those type of people. And that's bad, but it's just a small group of people that they complain about everything. And one of my comments to them a lot of times is if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And if all you do is bitch and complain, but you don't come up with any positive recommendations, right, then you're not serving any purpose for this community. Move someplace else if you don't like Rochester. Because we want to move ahead. They talk about needs and wants. And I said, certainly, we need to meet all the needs that we can. And with the current budget constraints that we're having from the state and federal government, that may not be possible. The previous administration they didn't borrow, but they drained down a lot of our accounts to the point where we've got nothing left to do things. They kept taxes low. Yep. And they did it intentionally. And they used money that they probably shouldn't have used because it basically hurt us for long-term advancement. And I look at, yes, we want to meet as many of the needs in the community that we have to meet. But if you don't take a look at the wants, the community will never grow. We will never succeed in attracting those young families. Yeah. We need someone to take a look at some of the things that people and families want in the community. It was interesting when I was talking to a Girl Scout troop, they said they want a roller rink. I said, who the hell roller skates anymore? I didn't say that way to the Girl Scouts.
You'd be surprised, though.
But it was like, holy Toledo, I've got middle schoolers,
Yeah.
Girl Scouts, that want a roller rink. Roller rinks went out of business 30 years ago. We couldn't sustain them back then. You want to do that now. We used to have a skateboard park, but it was built out of wood and it got damaged. Vandalism is a big thing because we don't provide enough opportunities for kids. Those 12 to 19 years old, there's a window there that I remember as a kid in the 60s. We had things for us to do.
Yeah.
And slowly those things disappeared because they were saying they were frills in the budget. Those were the wants, and we didn't want to provide any of those. We only provided the needs, the things that, make sure we, to pave our roads and pick up our trash and, make sure that the functions, that most of the things the city hall function properly. We don't need zoning and planning because that's just communist stuff.
Right.
But, the things that I need and then I can just ignore everybody else. And as long as I'm happy, everything else can go to hell. And doesn't attract new and young families. The Riverwalk, it's an expensive proposition. It's something they originally did say they wouldn't use any taxpayer money, but there are circumstances that have presented themselves this year that we had to, or the project was basically dead from here on out.
Right.
So the council did vote in their wisdom to fund it. 10-2 was the vote, if I'm not mistaken. And, people were saying that this is something we need to attract families to the city of Rochester. We need destination things in Rochester for people, or at least provide something for those families that are currently there. And then they can talk to their friends when they're saying, hey, what's it like moving to Rochester? Well, we got this great Riverwalk. We've got some good parks. We've got a few other things that are really exciting that are going on. And in the future, we've got a new art museum. We've got, our historical society is doing wonderful things. We've got these festivals that you should come and visit with us and during a festival and see what really Rochester is like.
Yeah.
One of the things I've heard when I was going door to door and other people that I talked to when they moved to Rochester, one of the things they say is they're surprised at how many volunteers there are in the community. There are a lot of groups that do a lot, and there are a lot of volunteers. I say, yeah, have you found a group to get involved with yet? And one of the things I'm going to do as mayor, and part of my speech that I'm going to give, my inaugural speech, is that it's going to be tough times.
Right.
And we need people to step up. If it's a soup kitchen you volunteer for, if it's the Elk Clubs or Lions Clubs, or if you're a downtown business, join Main Street, or if you're a business and community, join the chamber. Get involved with homeless organizations. Get involved with your church and to reach out to help people, because we're going to be limited on what we can do. And only with your volunteerism are we going to be able to make up that slack. Because Rochester's been known for a lot of volunteers and a lot of groups that are out there doing a lot of things. A community garden, so people that may not be able to get fruits and get vegetables that are grown here in New England, that they can now maybe grow their own, and help us. If you see vandalism, make that phone call.
Yeah.
Or try to stop it. Try to work with youth groups in the community to try to, or if you've got any good ideas, bring them forward and let's see what we can do. We may be able to find just enough money for you to be able to do a new project that's going to help children and youth in our community to stay away from crime and stay away from drugs. If it's a drug treatment center, you've got any experience at all working with, if you have a family member that's experienced this, get involved, help. We need volunteers. We need people who will bring compassion and bring some time to help these people. And, maybe it's going out and picking up trash on the weekends. We've got groups in town that are doing that. And they need more help. There's a dozen of them that do it regularly. If we had 50 people out there doing it, we'd clean up the whole city. If you've got an electric weed whacker or even a weed whacker, get out there and help clean up some of the areas where it may be private property between the sidewalk and a fence. Somebody brought to my attention that we've got this one street that is a major street in Rochester, and it just looks a mess because the business inside doesn't keep track of the land, the 1 foot strip outside of the property, which looks disaster.
Right, it's not their focus. They just want to sell stuff.
They just want to sell stuff.
Yeah.
I went actually this summer, the beginning of summer, when the weeds started growing in front of the Rochester Child Care Center. I went with my weed whacker, and we, because they were taking care of the inside of the park, but nobody ever did anything about the outside. So my wife and I went, and she said, "Bring your weed whacker." And I went out and I weed whacked all the lawn, all outside of their fence. Because when their person does the mowing, he doesn't take care of what's outside that small strip. So I did that, and I did the green strip between the sidewalk and the street. And we dropped, we put it out for the, in fact, actually I dumped it in a swale that's in back of my house that I'm trying to put stuff in. It's a place where I dump all my grass and leaves and stuff. And but it's the thing is that you can volunteer and do that kind of stuff on a Saturday or a Sunday. If you've got 3 hours, you can contribute them. Work with student groups. I mean, get involved with your school. Join your PTO or your PTA.
Yeah.
We need people to get involved with the community to help solve our problems. I mean, there's that golden hour that you talk about after school, where most kids in elementary school and high school, where their parents aren't home, they get home from school and the parents aren't home yet. That's the biggest time when these kids get into trouble.
Right. Right.
They're home alone. They may go out in the street with their friends, and that's when the first time they experience drugs or alcohol or vandalism or other types of damage in the community. We need to take a look at that time. And there are groups out there that do that, but they don't have enough people. And, if you can put in 3 hours a day with a human service organization, they will be so tremendously thankful.
Can I counterpoint that real quick? Because there's going to be people here that are watching this and they're going to say, I'm working 3 jobs. I got 3 kids. I barely paying my rent. Like, I just don't have time to volunteer. Is there anything that those folks can do? Or maybe just know that it's okay?
Yeah, well,
they can't.
It is okay. But the thing is, if they're taking kids to a sport game and they're sitting there watching the game, and
sure.
And you're taking kids to soccer, volunteer to be an assistant coach. I coached Little League baseball for years, and I was an assistant coach for a soccer team. Wherever my kids were, in fact, I had one year that I had no kids on my team because I had them below and above, and I was right in the middle of an instructional league in baseball. And the thing is that if a parent was there and he was willing to help, just even a littlest bit, that would take a little burden off me that we could do more for our children. Or a mother that, she doesn't want to help sports coaches coach the team. My wife actually coached a softball team.
Right.
While I was coaching baseball, she coached it because our daughter wanted to play baseball. She ended up playing softball for a season. And then she says, I don't want to play softball. I want to play baseball. So her and a couple other girls came over, and my instructional league, when we had the draft, I was the only team that had girls on the team. Because I had my daughter and 2 other friends of hers that played softball that didn't want to play. So the guys were all saying, well, we got a softball league. That's for the women. And I'm saying, you want to be in court on this one?
Yeah. Right.
This is equal rights here. These girls want to play baseball. Let them play baseball. They said, well, nobody will put them on your team. And I said, I will.
Yeah.
And I had 3 girls on my team. And one of the girls, I used to say, you throw like a girl. And she used to say, Coach, I am a girl.
What do you want from me?
What do you want me? But she could hit and she could feel like it better than most of the guys on the team.
Yeah.
So when I had them, they were late elementary age, at middle school, just getting into middle school before they got into the Little League, and or kids that had never experienced a Little League before, that they at Roger Allen Field, and they would be there, help come in on a Sunday and help groom the fields if that's all you can do. Yeah. Or there's things you can do out there. Maybe it's going and reading at a class, but I mean, if you work and and I know there are a lot of people that work 2 jobs. There was many times in my career I was working 70 hours a week in
sure.
2 jobs just to get to make sure the family was on, things were going, to keep keep our head above water. And I know there are a lot of people out there that do that. Yeah. But the thing is that if it's a time where you're going to sit down, if you've got the time to sit down and have a beer and watch a game, that's nice. But if you can do something that will help your community, that's better.
Volunteering is contagious too. So if you are one of those people that volunteer on a regular basis, whether it's a soup kitchen or cleaning up or running a program, for kids or whatever, take somebody else with you. Somebody that might be, it could be a neighbor, it could be a friend, it could be anybody. Take somebody with you just once. Yeah. Let them get comfortable. And they will just start showing up if they like it, of course. And that's a big thing. I learned that when I was in the military too. Because it was very important that we go and volunteer in the community, right? Mm-hmm. It's a good way to bridge that gap. I think there's opportunities out there to make our communities better and all of that. I don't know if you have any parting words or anything. How can people connect with you either online or reach you?
Well, I have they have set me up with my city address. So my email is chuck.grassie@rochesternh.gov.
Okay. And
that's probably the best way to reach me right now. I do get it. It goes to a separate mail account. If you send it to my general mail account, my personal mail account, I've got so much spam Sometimes my finger moves too quickly on the delete button.
Yeah.
That little garbage can, and sometimes I accidentally delete something I wasn't supposed to. But I I'm usually reading 2 emails ahead as I'm deleting stuff, so that only the stuff that I catch. But occasionally, some stuff will get through. But I get up in the morning, I have 100 emails there, and most of it's probably 50% of it is spam, and then the other 49% of it is just advertisements from companies I bought something from at some point in time.
Mine's a wasteland too.
I've got the Nigerian prince that wants to give me $3.4 million that's sitting in a bank in New York City waiting for me.
Yeah, just wait that one out. You'll get it. Well,
yeah.
Listen, I think Rochester, New Hampshire is. They're so lucky to have you. For everything I know of you, I think that you're gonna fill those shoes and really deliver in the city. Maybe I can get you back in the future.
Oh, I've got to get back, because there's a ton of stuff that we did not talk about, and we've already run out of time.
I know,
and it's great. I'd be happy to come back, anytime at all, and we can talk about different subjects and maybe something that has nothing to do with Rochester and local government at all.
I would love that,
but because it's always fun having talks with you as well, Adam, and I appreciate the time that you've given me today.
Oh, thank you.
I look forward to it. I think that. One of the things, I actually had people who decided to run for city council this year because they said, if you're putting your name in, I want to be there.
Yeah.
Because I see this as exciting things that are going to happen. And because I've always been someone who brings a tremendous amount of energy to whatever I do. And as the person said that didn't put my sign in his front yard, he said, you leave a lot of bodies in your trail. And I says, that's right, because if you aren't coming along with for the ride, it's, you're going to get kicked off the car. And because we don't want, I don't want people who are going to drag us back. I want to have Rochester be an exciting place. And I'm going to be the main cheerleader to bring Rochester forward and make it a community that you're going to be sitting here 5 years from now. If I get to serve my 2 terms, you're going to say, why did I ever buy a house in Barrington? I should be living in Rochester, because because I'm going to Rochester every day for everything that's going on there. I've already, I've spoken to the people, and I've been talking to them for the last 2 years about, what can I do to help this festival that we have become better and bigger? And that every weekend we've got something going on to give people a reason to come to Rochester. And there's just so many ideas out there, but, and they don't all cost a lot of money. No. And that's the thing. They just take a lot of people.
Yeah, you just got to be there.
And I'm hoping that's the thing. And I've had so many people say, we're excited. And we want that, and excitement is contagious, as you well know.
I agree.
And that's what I want to bring to the mayor's position and to the city council and to the city of Rochester. I'm going to challenge all of my city councilors to get out there and reach out to the public, find out what's going on, and bring those ideas back here. As I've always said, let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Well, Rochester's lucky to have you, and I can't wait to see what you do with it. So next mayor of Rochester, New Hampshire, Chuck Grassie, thank you for sitting down with me. I greatly appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you.
January 6th, you become the Rochester mayor.
Yeah.
And
6 o'clock that evening, the ceremonies will start. Sometime between then, and within the next hour, I will be sworn in, and I will give my inauguration speech. But interesting story. Okay. And I was looking up this because I had to go back to 1976 and find out what day of the week was January 6th. And it happens that it was a Tuesday. And council, and the first Tuesday of January, and council meets on the first Tuesday in January for the inauguration, unless it falls on the first, whereas we meet on the Wednesday. And that's in our charter. And January 6th, 1976 was the first time I walked into the city council chambers and took the oath of office as city councilor.
So this is like full circle for you.
50 years.
Okay, so to go from there to where you are now, it has to be pretty satisfying, right?
Well, yeah, it is. I used to walk into City Hall, and I ran for mayor once before and didn't win. Okay. I mean, in a four-way race, it was a lot easier for me to win that race with 38% of the vote. I think I probably would have been able to pull it off, but it would have been really tight. I mean, I'm known for 3 tie votes in the city of Rochester, which is probably a record. Now, everybody tells me they don't know of anything nationally that's ever occurred like that. So I have people who support me and strongly support me, and I have people that despise me and strongly despise me. That's not a problem. But I always could win in my district. Oh. I tended to represent more liberal districts. Even if they were Republican, they tended to have had more teachers, doctors, lawyers that lived in my first district I ran in, and I won in that district. And I would walk into City Hall, and I would look at the portraits on the wall, and those were all the mayors over the years. And I said, one day, as a young kid, I say, one day I'm going to be on that wall. And it took me 50 years to get there, but I finally made it.
You got that.
So, yeah.
Why would you want to be mayor to begin with?
Well, my political activity goes way back to the 60s. And I volunteered. My grandmother I was brought up by my grandparents. My grandmother was a union steward in the shoe shop, and she used to occasionally take me to union meetings, and I would have, I would there learning the songs and everything else. Don't ask me to sing them now. I may be able to actually carry the tune. I just don't have no clue in remembering any of them. But I met a lot of important. I met Paul Newman. John Kennedy came into the shoe factory. My grandmother let me stay up and watch the convention, which went into the early morning. Kennedy's nomination, and he was somebody that inspired us. I was in 5th grade when he was shot. And I just remember our teacher didn't tell us, but when I got into the car, they said, "It's awful what happened to the president." My aunt picked me up at school, and I said, "What do you mean?" And a lot of the other kids knew, but the 5th grade class didn't know. And she said, "The president's been shot." And so we rushed right home, and I immediately turned the TV on and watched it there. So, the